You do not need more tools to make your marriage better. I hear it all the time. I meet with a couple and they say, we just need some more tools or some better tools to communicate or handle conflict or parent or whatever. Here's the thing about tools. Tools are only as good as the person using the tool. Now, I'm not a handyman, fix-it kind of person. In fact, I get really proud of myself when the toilet is running and I jiggle the handle and it stops running. For me, that is an accomplishment. I feel pretty good. One year when we were at Christmas with my family, my wife got me a power drill. This was still early enough in our marriage that she still had a certain blessed if naive optimism about my handyman abilities. When I opened it up, my family, who knew me pretty well, saw that it was a power drill. And my brother cocks his head and says, "What the heck are you going to do with that?" He knew that the most likely outcome of me using that power drill is that somebody would get shot. Oh, you don't think that's possible? You have not seen me try to use a power drill. That's how bad I am with tools. What I'm saying is that in order to be able to use the tool, you have to become the person who can use the tool. So the most fundamental thing you need to help your marriage thrive is not more or better tools. You need more and better love. You need to grow in love. Now I know, this sounds so basic that it probably doesn't even sound helpful. It's like, have you ever seen someone watching a boxing match and they yell at the TV like, "Hit him!" And you're thinking, that is literally the entire point. If you're going to say something, at least say something helpful, you know what I mean? That's probably what it sounds, grow in love. That's probably what it sounds like. But what if the boxer is getting completely dominated by the other guy? And as he falls to the mat after taking a nasty combo to the face, what he's thinking is, if I just had better gloves, or if I just had nicer shoes, or definitely if I would have went with the salmon shorts, then I would have been able to hit him. No. He did not need better or nicer stuff. What he needed was to get better at boxing. What I'm saying is that in order to love your spouse and have a great marriage, it is going to be much more effective to focus on the bedrock foundation of what makes marriage work than it is to focus on, admittedly, the useful yet auxiliary tools. So I want to talk about two important aspects of love that we must be growing in order to have great marriages. Growing in these aspects of love will make it possible for you to use the marriage tools the way they were meant to be used, and in the end, will help your marriage to thrive. But before I jump in to these two aspects of love, I have a gift that I want to give you. It is my free training, Communicate Better, Be Happy Together. This training is a crash course in better communication. It will help you communicate better today if you listen to it and apply what it talks about. In it, I cover the most important goal of communication, the most important tool for communication. Yes, tools are helpful. But we will also go over a number of obstacles that I have seen couples struggle with to overcome, even after they have the tools they need. In the end, this training will help you grow in faith in Christ, so that you can grow in your ability to love your spouse, so that you can communicate better and be happier together. So go to my website, nickprine.com, and get that free training. Okay, 2 aspects of love that allow you to use marriage tools. First, vulnerability. Now you say, wait, I thought we were talking about love. What does vulnerability have to do with love? You cannot have real intimacy without vulnerability. Trying to love someone without being vulnerable would be like trying to make love while wearing a suit of plate armor. Okay? Even if you could do it, it probably would end up feeling cold and sharp, and you'd probably get little metal barbs in your junk. Okay? You don't want to try that. But here's the problem. Vulnerability makes you feel vulnerable. If you lower your defenses and be vulnerable with your spouse, they could stab you. In fact, they probably have stabbed you before. Okay, hopefully in a metaphorical sense. So then, you are left with 2 options. Either try to love without vulnerability, or risk being hurt for the sake of potentially having deeper overall intimacy. On the surface, neither option sounds all that great, but if you want to have a thriving marriage, there's only one real option. You have to figure out how to take the risk to allow yourself to be hurt so that you can have the potential for deeper intimacy. So how do you grow in your ability to be vulnerable? You will need to know what you're afraid of and how Jesus gives you what you need to walk through those fears. Now, there are a lot of things that we can be afraid of. Rejection, not being cared for, conflict, boogers, etc. Typically, we try to get away from our fears. For example, that's why whenever I pick my boogers, I flick them away. Get away, get. So if we are afraid of being rejected, we will move away from that fear. But we will never be vulnerable enough to be rejected, which means we will never be able to use whatever tools we might have been able to use, and in the end, our fear of being rejected has kept us from being vulnerable, which has kept us from having real intimacy. In order to overcome these fears and have a great relationship, we must grab hold of how the gospel makes us safe enough to take the risk to be vulnerable. Jesus' love and acceptance gives us a safe place from which to go out and take the risk of being rejected by our spouse. Psalm 23 says, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Jesus wants you to find comfort and strength in His presence with you, so that you can have the courage to take the risk that your spouse will reject you. And it's only then that you will have the peace in your heart that you need to drop your shields, be vulnerable with your spouse, and who knows, you might even find that as you are vulnerable, they respond with vulnerability, and you start a cycle that builds and builds intimacy with each other. Because look, you have to be vulnerable with each other in order for real intimacy to happen. Because if your spouse is not close enough to stab you, they are not close enough to kiss. Second aspect of love that we need to use our marriage tools. Sacrificial service. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends." Jesus laid down his life for you because he loved you. Jesus lived the life you should have lived and died the death you should have died so that you will get all the blessings, while he took all the curses. Which, if you think about it, is the world's worst trade deal. That is worse than the Lakers deciding to trade LeBron James for me. 5'5", can't shoot a basketball, me. Jesus took everything bad and gave everything good to us. It was not fair, but he did it out of loving sacrifice. So my question is, are you loving your spouse like that? Are you taking the bad end of the deal, whatever the deal is? Are you doing more of the dishes than she is? Are you bearing more responsibility for the family than he is? Are you taking the bad end of the deal? Are you doing maybe taking so much of the bad end of the deal that maybe you even feel like you're being taken advantage of? In the gospel, Jesus got taken advantage of. Now, I don't want you to be taken advantage of if you are not willing to enter that sacrifice. That is a whole different thing. But in order to grow in love, sometimes we have to sacrifice, which often sacrificing feels really painful. You could be using the best communication tools you can get, but if you are using them to fight for what is fair or what feels right or for what you want, instead of choosing to love your spouse sacrificially, it would be like you're using a power drill as a paintbrush and wondering why there are so many holes in your painting. It is not the tool's fault that it's not working. It's because you are using the tool to build up yourself instead of sacrificially loving your spouse. Now, one question that I often get with these ideas is, okay, how do I grow in love though? I get tools. The tools are pretty simple. Here's a tool, it works this way, use it. How do I grow in love? That's way less tactile. Okay, two parts to that answer. There's a lot of things that we could say, but two parts. One is receive and rest in Christ's love for you. He made himself vulnerable to the point of literal death. He chose to serve you sacrificially to the point of literal death. Ask him to teach you to love like that so that you can learn to be vulnerable and to sacrifice for your spouse to the point of figurative death. Secondly, make a decision to be more vulnerable or to sacrifice more than you are now. You don't have to do this, be transformed overnight, okay? Make a commitment in your heart to, okay, whenever you see a place where you could sacrifice for your spouse's benefit, then make that sacrifice. Start with small steps, and in a couple months or maybe even a couple years, you will look back and you'll be able to see, I have really grown in my ability to be vulnerable or in my ability to sacrifice. You will have grown in your ability to love So I hope you found this helpful. If you have, I think you will find my communication training helpful. So go to my website, get that training, and I will talk to you soon.